The first thing Valeth noticed about humans was that they smiled at machines. Not because the machines were alive. Not because the machines could respond. Humans smiled anyway, as if the metal and screens deserved kindness, simply for existing. Valeth stood near the observation window of the cultural exchange station, her long fingers folded neatly in front of her. The station floated quietly between stars, a place built not for war or trade, but for learning. Dozens of species passed through its halls, sharing ideas, customs, and language. Valeth had visited many such places before. Humans, however, were new. They were smaller than most of the station's dominant species, softer in build, lacking natural armor, claws, or obvious defenses. By all measurable standards, they were fragile, and yet everywhere they went, the station felt louder, warmer, less predictable. A human technician walked past Valeth, patting the wall panel as it slid shut. "Good job," he muttered to it. Valeth tilted her head. She had already learned that humans spoke to animals, plants, and even objects, but she had not yet understood why. Many species bonded strongly with their technology, but none thanked doors. Curiosity fluttered inside her, light and pleasant. She followed the human down the corridor. "Excuse me?" Valeth said, her translator shaping her musical tones into clear human words. "May I ask a question?" The human turned immediately, smiling wide. Humans smiled often. It did not always mean happiness, she had learned, but it almost always meant openness. "Sure," he said. "What's up?" "Why do you speak kindly to the station panels?" she asked. "They cannot feel." The human laughed, a short burst of sound that carried no threat. "Yeah, I know. It's just habit, I guess. Why form such a habit?" Valeth pressed gently. He shrugged. "Makes the day nicer." That answer stayed with her long after he left. Byleth was a xenolinguist by trade, but curiosity was her true calling. She studied how species thought, not just how they spoke. Humans were proving to be endlessly fascinating. They joked during stressful tasks. They shared personal stories with strangers. They admitted mistakes openly, then laughed about them. Other species hid failure. Humans displayed it like a badge. In the communal dining area, Valeth watched humans sit with species far larger and more dangerous than themselves, completely relaxed. One human offered part of his meal to a crystalline being that did not eat. Another patiently explained a card game to a four-armed reptilian diplomat, losing on purpose so the other could learn. Humans were generous with time, emotion, and information. Almost too generous. Valeth began asking questions. At first, they were small ones. Why do humans decorate living spaces even when function is sufficient? Why do humans create stories where they already know the ending? Why do humans laugh when embarrassed? The humans answered eagerly, sometimes arguing among themselves, sometimes admitting they did not know. They never seemed offended. If anything, they appeared pleased by her interest. "You're adorable when you're confused," one human scientist told her kindly. Valeth did not fully understand the word adorable, but the tone suggested affection, not insult. Then she asked a different kind of question. It was unplanned. A simple moment of honest curiosity. They were seated in the observation lounge, watching a star slowly rotate beyond the glass. A group of humans chatted nearby, relaxed and unguarded. Valeth turned to one of them. "May I ask," she said, "why humans sometimes change so completely under pressure?" The human blinked. "What do you mean?" "I have observed that in calm situations humans are playful and open," Valeth said. "But when situations grow serious, your behavior alters very quickly. Your communication becomes direct. Your movements synchronize. Your emotions appear controlled." The human's smile faded slightly. Not gone, just quieter. "That's just focus," he said. "Nothing special." "But it happens very fast," Valeth said. faster than evolutionary models predict. The human looked away toward the stars. Guess we're used to it. Used to it. Violeth recorded the phrase. She asked another human later, "Why do humans value restraint so highly?" The human laughed nervously. "Do we?" "Yes," Violeth said. "You praise those who hold back and keep it together. These concepts appear often in your media." The human scratched his head. Never thought about it. But he did not answer the question. That was when Violeth noticed the pattern. Humans would answer almost anything. They explained their wars, their failures, their darkest history. They spoke openly of mistakes that had nearly destroyed them as a species. They shared shame and pride with equal honesty. But certain questions made them pause. Not recoil, not become angry. Just pause. Violeth began to sense the invisible boundary before she crossed it. A subtle shift in posture, a careful choice of words, a gentle redirection of the conversation. It intrigued her deeply. She asked one human commander, "What is the one thing humans fear about themselves?" The commander smiled politely. "That's a big question." "Yes," Violeth said, "but humans enjoy big questions." The commander considered her for a long moment. Then he said, "Some answers aren't helpful outside context." Violeth thanked him and moved on, unsettled. Humans did not forbid her questions. They did not warn her away. They simply declined. And yet, their behavior suggested trust, not secrecy. This confused her more than outright refusal would have. One cycle later, Violeth sat alone in her quarters, reviewing recordings. Human voices filled the room, overlapping with laughter, debate, and silence. She noticed how often humans said, "We don't talk about that," but never explained why. Curiosity, once light and playful, now sharpened. She decided to ask one final harmless question. In the botanical dome, a human botanist worked quietly among alien plants. Violeth approached carefully. "You care for life, not your own?" Violeth observed.
"Even when it provides no benefit." The human smiled. "Life's life."
Violeth hesitated, then asked, "Is there something humans choose not to be?"
The botanist's hand stilled.
The silence stretched, not long, but heavy. Finally, the human sighed softly. "Yeah," he said. "What?" Violeth asked. The human looked up at her, eyes thoughtful, not afraid.
"Something we could be, if we let ourselves."
He returned to his work without saying more. Violeth stood there long after he left. For the first time since meeting humans, her curiosity felt less adorable, and much more important. Violeth did not sleep that cycle. Her species did not require rest in the same way humans did, but she usually entered a low-thought state to organize memories and emotions. This time, her mind refused to slow. Human words echoed again and again, circling the same unanswered space. Something we could be, if we let ourselves. Humans spoke often. They explained themselves freely. Yet this thing, this quiet space they stepped around, it remained untouched. Violeth decided to observe instead of asking. The next few cycles, she followed human routines closely. She watched how they worked, how they relaxed, how they reacted when plans changed. Humans complained loudly about small problems, yet faced large ones with surprising calm. When a system delay caused inconvenience across the station, humans joked about it. When a delicate experiment failed, they sighed, adjusted, and tried again. They adapted quickly. Too quickly, Violeth compared data. Other species required formal permission chains to adjust plans. Humans acted first, explained later. They trusted each other's judgment even when disagreeing. Arguments ended not with dominance, but compromise. It was efficient, almost unsettling. One cycle. The station announced a minor environmental fluctuation. Nothing dangerous. Merely a temperature imbalance between decks. The message caused confusion among several species. Meetings were called. Discussions stretched on. The humans did something different. Without being told, small groups formed. Engineers checked systems. Scientists ran simulations. Technicians rerouted power. No one raised their voice. No one panicked. They shared information rapidly, using short phrases and gestures. Valeth stood at the edge of the control room, watching humans move like pieces of a single thought. Within hours, the issue was solved. Later, Valeth approached a human engineer named Mara. "You acted without formal instruction," Valeth said. Mara smiled, tiredly. "Yeah, someone had to. But you were not afraid of making an incorrect choice?" Mara shrugged. "Doing nothing is also a choice." That answer disturbed Valeth more than she expected. Among her people, hesitation was considered wisdom. Among humans, hesitation seemed optional. Valeth returned to her data. She noticed something else. Humans frequently discussed emotions. They named them easily: fear, hope, anger, joy. Other species struggled to define such internal states. Humans not only defined them, but taught others how to recognize them. Yet despite this emotional openness, there were moments when humans went very still, their expressions flattened, their voices lowered. Those moments always appeared before difficult decisions. Valeth remembered the phrase humans used: pulling oneself together. She requested access to human cultural archives. The station approved her request quickly. Humans rarely restricted information.
She began with stories. Human fiction was filled with impossible odds and fragile heroes.
Again and again, humans imagined themselves standing against forces larger than them, not always winning, but always trying. They admired characters who chose kindness when cruelty was easier, who showed restraint when power was available. Valeth noticed a repeated theme: the fear of becoming something worse than the enemy. That concept puzzled her. Why fear a stronger version of oneself? She shifted to historical records. Humans documented their failures with painful honesty. Wars, divisions, environmental damage. The archives did not hide these things, but they always ended with reflection, never pride. Never celebration. Just resolve. Valeth felt something unfamiliar tighten inside her chest cavity. She realized humans were not proud of what they could do at their worst. They were proud of stopping themselves. Still, she needed confirmation. She approached a human diplomat named Elias, someone known for patience and careful speech. "May I ask you a question?" Valeth said. Elias smiled. "You always do." "Yes," Valeth said. "But this one may be uncomfortable." Elias considered that, then nodded.
"Go ahead. Humans often speak of limits," Valeth said. "Not physical limits."
"Internal ones." "Why?" Elias leaned back, folding his arms. "Because without them, we don't like who we become."
"That implies choice," Valeth said.
"It is," Elias replied. Valeth tilted her head. "Other species react. Humans decide." Elias chuckled softly. "That's a generous way to put it. Is it inaccurate?" He did not answer immediately. Instead, he asked, "Do you know why humans like stories where we lose control?"
Valeth considered. "To explore fear?"
"Partly," Elias said, "but mostly to remind ourselves not to." Valeth felt the pieces begin to align. Later, she attended a casual human gathering. Music played softly. Humans talked, laughed, shared food. Nothing formal, nothing important, until someone brought up an old memory. A human spoke of a moment when they almost said something cruel, but stopped. Another admitted they had nearly given up during a difficult time, but chose not to. The conversation turned reflective, quiet. Violet realized humans practiced restraint constantly, in small ways. It was not a single switch. It was a habit. And habits could be broken. That thought made her uneasy. The next cycle, Valeth presented a preliminary report to the station council. She spoke carefully, choosing neutral language. Humans possess an unusual internal regulation mechanism, she said. It allows rapid behavioral adaptation combined with moral self-interruption. Several delegates exchanged looks. One might call this maturity, said a scaled representative.
Or suppression, said another. Valeth nodded. Possibly both. After the meeting, a human security officer approached her. You're getting close, he said quietly.
Close to what? Valeth asked. He smiled faintly. To the thing we don't explain well. Why not explain it? Valeth asked. The officer looked at the floor. Because understanding it doesn't mean knowing when to use it. Valeth returned to her quarters shaken. Humans were not hiding a weapon. They were hiding a door they guarded from themselves. She reviewed one final recording, a human child asking an adult why they had to behave. Because, the adult said gently, you can do more than you should. Valeth ended the playback. Her curiosity no longer felt light. It felt heavy, and she understood now why humans smiled at machines. They practiced kindness everywhere, because they knew exactly what happened when they didn't. Something we could be. If we let ourselves. Valeth realized she was no longer asking what humans were. She was asking what would happen if they ever stopped choosing. And that question frightened her, not because of violence, but because of certainty. Humans could become many things, and restraint was the one they worked hardest to maintain. She closed her report draft without submitting it. Some knowledge, she decided, should mature slowly, and some curiosity should learn when to rest. Valeth began to notice the smallest changes first. It was never dramatic. Humans did not announce when they were making important choices. They did not raise flags or perform rituals. Instead, it showed in the way they stood a little straighter, spoke a little less, and listened a little more. The station entered a new research phase that cycle. Nothing dangerous, nothing urgent. A shared project involving energy balance and long-term sustainability. Multiple species were involved, each bringing their own methods and expectations. At first, discussions were polite but slow. Some species preferred strict order. Others required long consensus rituals. Meetings stretched on, filled with repeated points and careful phrasing. Valeth observed quietly, recording behavioral differences. Then a human researcher asked a simple question. What are we actually trying to solve first? The room fell silent. It was not an aggressive question. It was calm, almost gentle, but it cut through layers of unnecessary complexity. One by one, the delegates began to respond. Priorities were listed. Assumptions were questioned. Within a single session, the project gained direction. Valeth felt a strange tension release. Humans did not dominate the discussion. They did not command attention. They focused it. Later, Valeth reviewed recordings of the meeting. She noticed something subtle. When disagreements appeared, humans did not push harder. They slowed down. They repeated the other side's point in their own words, confirming understanding before responding. This was not instinct. This was trained restraint. Valeth began interviewing non-human delegates. They are strange, said a silicon-based analyst. They could control the room if they wanted. They choose not to. A winged envoy added, they always seem ready for something worse than what is happening. That comment stayed with her, ready, not eager, not fearful, prepared. Violet returned to the human archives, this time searching for psychological studies. She found countless discussions about impulse control, ethics, responsibility. Humans debated these topics endlessly, never settling on a final answer. They seemed uncomfortable with certainty. She realized that humans did not believe they were naturally good. They believed goodness required effort. That belief shaped everything. One cycle, a minor disagreement arose between two departments. Nothing serious. A scheduling conflict, a shared resource issue. Voices were raised briefly. Tension rippled through the station. Valeth watched closely. Human supervisors stepped in, not to assign blame, but to slow the pace. They separated the discussion from the emotion. They acknowledged frustration without feeding it.
"It makes sense you're upset," one said calmly. "Let's fix the problem, not fight it."
The argument faded. Valeth felt a strange chill. Among their own people, conflict was avoided through strict social rules. Among humans, conflict was expected and managed. They assumed emotions would rise. They prepared for it. That night, Valeth entered her low-thought state but remained half-aware. Human voices filled her memory again. Not words this time, but patterns. She realized something important. Humans did not trust their instincts. They trusted their systems. Rules, ethics, habits, cultural reminders, stories. That was why they told so many stories, not to imagine who they could become, but to remember who they should not. The next cycle, Valeth encountered a human child visiting the station with a family delegation. The child stared openly at her unusual form. "You're shiny," the child said. Valeth crouched slightly. "Yes." "Are you nice?" the child asked. Valeth hesitated. "I try to be." The child nodded seriously. "My mom says trying matters." That sentence struck Valeth harder than any academic paper. Trying mattered. Later, Valeth spoke with the child's mother. "Why teach such things so early?" Valeth asked.
"Is it not assumed?"
The woman shook her head. "No."
"It's learned. What happens if it is not taught?" Valeth asked.
The woman's smile faded, just slightly. "We've seen that." She did not elaborate.
Valeth did not press. She finally understood why humans avoided certain questions.
Not because the answers were secret, but because they were unfinished. Humanity was still actively choosing itself. The station announced a full system simulation exercise soon after. A harmless test designed to measure cooperation and response time. No danger, no consequences. Still, humans prepared. They reviewed procedures. They discussed roles. They practiced communication. Not once did they joke during preparation. Valeth observed closely. When the simulation began, humans changed again. Not into something frightening, into something precise. They spoke less, moved efficiently, shared information without ego. When mistakes happened, they corrected without blame. Other species followed their lead almost unconsciously. The simulation ended ahead of schedule, exceeding expectations. Afterward, humans relaxed instantly. Laughter returned. Someone made a joke about overthinking it. Valeth felt something like awe. The switch was real, and it was controlled. She compiled her observations into a private report, not for the council, but for herself. Humans possessed a rare trait, voluntary limitation. They were capable of intense focus, emotional suppression, and unified action. But they did not idolize these states. They treated them as tools, not identities. They returned to normalcy as soon as possible, because staying there too long was dangerous. Valeth finally understood the fear behind the door humans guarded. It was not about harm. It was about losing warmth, losing humor, losing empathy, becoming efficient at the cost of being kind. That was the thing humans refused to romanticize. That was the thing they did not explain casually, because once you admired it, you might chase it, and humans had learned, slowly, painfully, that some abilities should be used only when necessary. Violet ended her report with a personal note. Humans are not unaware of their power. They are deeply aware of it. That awareness shapes every choice they make. They are not ruled by instinct. They are ruled by effort. She closed the file. Her curiosity was no longer innocent, but it had become respectful. She realized something else as well. If humans ever stopped trying, no one would need to ask questions anymore. And that, more than anything, was why they kept choosing restraint, again and again, every single day. She looked out at the stars beyond the station window. For the first time, Violet did not wonder what humans were hiding. She wondered how long they could keep choosing who they wanted to be. And she hoped, quietly, that they would never forget why they started the alert. Did not sound dramatic. There were no flashing red lights, no sharp alarms, no urgent calls over the station network. Instead, a soft chime echoed through the corridors, followed by a calm announcement. Attention, all personnel. Minor system irregularity detected. Please remain in your current locations while diagnostics are performed.
Most species reacted with visible concern, some froze.
Others began speaking rapidly to one another, trying to understand what irregularity meant. A few demanded more information immediately. The humans did something else. They paused. Valeth noticed it at once. Conversations stopped, mid-sentence. Smiles faded, not into fear, but into focus. Humans did not rush. They did not panic. They looked around, checked displays, and waited for more data. Waiting, Violet realized, was also a choice. The announcement continued, still calm. This is not an emergency. Further updates will follow. Valeth watched a human technician near her straighten his posture. His hands moved with purpose, opening a diagnostic panel without being told to do so. Just in case, he murmured to no one. Valeth felt a quiet tension spread through the station, like a held breath. Within minutes, new information arrived. A power distribution loop had become unstable. It was not dangerous, but if left unchecked, it could slowly affect multiple systems. Life support was not at risk. No one was in danger. But time mattered. Meetings were suggested. Committees began forming among several species, eager to discuss options. The humans did not wait. They gathered quickly, not in a single place, but across the station. Short messages passed between them. Clear, direct, calm. I'll monitor flow stability. I'll coordinate with engineering. I'll keep other teams informed. No one gave orders. Everyone took responsibility. Valeth moved through the station, observing. Humans shared information freely with other species, translating technical language into simple explanations. They listened to concerns without dismissing them, but they did not slow their actions. They were not being rude. They were prioritizing. Valeth felt a strange sense of reassurance, even as uncertainty hung in the air. She approached Elias, the human diplomat, who stood near a display showing system data. You are acting as if this situation is familiar, Valeth said. Elias nodded slightly.
It is. But this exact problem has never occurred before,
Valeth said. True, Elias replied. But the pattern has. Valeth studied his face. There was no excitement there, no pride, only attention. Are you afraid? She asked. Elias thought for a moment. Not really. Concerned, yes. Focused, definitely. That distinction matters to you, Valeth said. It does, he replied. Across the station, the irregularity began to spread faster than expected. Still not dangerous, but more complex. Some systems reacted unpredictably. Automated responses conflicted. The situation grew messy. Several non-human delegates voiced worry. One demanded a full shutdown of shared systems. Another suggested isolating entire sections of the station. Humans listened. Then one of them spoke. "If we do that," she said calmly, "we'll create more problems than we solve." "How can you be sure?" a delegate asked sharply. "I'm not," the human replied, "but I am sure we can stabilize instead of overreacting." Valeth noticed the word, overreacting. Humans feared that more than failure. They adjusted their approach. Teams reconfigured on the fly. When one plan showed signs of strain, it was changed without argument. No one defended their idea out of pride. Valeth realized something important. Humans did not cling to being right. They clung to being responsible. Time passed. The station remained stable, but the issue resisted complete resolution. It was stubborn, complex, and required careful coordination. Fatigue began to show among several species. Humans noticed immediately. They rotated tasks, encouraged breaks, made sure no one carried the burden alone. Violet felt something warm and heavy in her chest.
This was the thing. This was what humans did when pressure increased.
They did not become colder. They became clearer. At one point, a younger human technician made a mistake. A small one. Easily corrected, but enough to cause a brief delay. The technician froze, clearly expecting criticism. Instead, a senior engineer spoke gently.
"Okay, we've got it."
What did we learn? The tension dissolved. Valeth recorded the moment carefully. No shame, no blame. Only correction and continuation. After many hours, the system stabilized. The irregularity faded, controlled and contained. The station returned to normal function. There was no celebration. Humans exhaled, literally. Shoulders dropped. Smiles returned, tired but genuine. Someone joked about needing more sleep. Laughter followed. Valeth stood quietly, deeply affected. She approached the human security officer who had spoken to her earlier. "You used it," she said. He looked at her, understanding immediately. Yeah. And yet, Valeth continued, there was no loss of kindness. He nodded.
"That's the goal. Is it difficult?" she asked.
"All the time," he replied. Valeth realized then that humans did not fear their capability because it was destructive.
They feared it because it was seductive. Efficiency without empathy was easy. Control without compassion was tempting. Humans chose the harder path, every time. Later, Valeth updated her private report again. When humans face pressure, they do not reveal a hidden monster. They reveal discipline. Their danger is not in what they do under stress, but in how effective they become if they stop caring. She paused, then added another line. Humanity survives not because of strength, but because of restraint, practiced collectively.
She closed the report.
The station lights dimmed to their evening cycle. Life returned to its usual rhythm. Conversations resumed. Curiosity returned. But Valeth had changed. She no longer watched humans with light fascination. She watched them with respect and a quiet understanding, because now she knew. The thing humans avoided talking about was not a secret. It was a promise, one they renewed every time pressure came and passed, and one they hoped they would never have to break. Valeth submitted her final report at the end of the cycle, but she did not send it to the council right away. Instead, she read it again. Slowly. Carefully. It was not written like her usual work. There were fewer technical terms, fewer charts, more observations, more pauses, the kind of report that admitted it did not have all the answers. She wondered if that, too, was something she had learned from humans. Outside her quarters, the station moved as it always did. The species crossed paths. Conversations overlapped. Life continued without ceremony. The earlier irregularity had already faded into memory. Another small challenge handled and set aside. Humans had returned to their usual state. They joked again. They lingered in corridors. They argued about food and music and stories. If someone arrived now, Valeth thought, they would never guess what humans were capable of. That was the point. She requested a final meeting with the human delegation, not an official hearing. Just a conversation. They agreed immediately. They gathered in a quiet lounge overlooking open space. Stars drifted slowly beyond the glass, distant and calm. Elias was there, the security officer, a few others. No uniforms, no ranks. Valeth stood before them. "I have finished my observations," she said, "and I believe I understand now why my earlier questions made you uncomfortable." Elias smiled gently. "We figured you would." "I want to be clear," Valeth continued. "I do not believe humans are dangerous." Mara raised an eyebrow. "That's good to hear." "I believe," Valeth said, choosing each word with care, "that humans are disciplined." No one interrupted.
"You are capable of great focus," she said. "Of control."
Of acting together quickly and effectively. But you do not celebrate this capability. You hide it behind humor, kindness, and openness.
The security officer nodded slightly.
"You practice restraint daily," Valeth said. "Not because you are weak, but because you know you are not."
There was silence, not tense, thoughtful. Elias spoke softly. "We try." Valeth inclined her head. "That effort is what makes you unique." She paused, then added, "And that is why I will not recommend further study of this trait at this time." Mara laughed quietly. "You sure?"
"You could write a whole series." "I could," Valeth agreed.
"But some things should not be copied without understanding the cost." The humans exchanged looks. Something unspoken passed between them. "What will you tell the council?" Elias asked. Valeth answered honestly, that humanity is safe, and that it is safest when left to choose for itself. Later, after the meeting ended, Valeth walked alone through the station one last time before departure. She passed humans working late, helping others, laughing softly. She stopped near a window where a human child pressed their hands against the glass, staring at the stars. "Do you think they're watching us?" the child asked a nearby adult. The adult smiled. "Maybe. But that's okay." Valeth felt something settle inside her. Humans did not assume the universe was hostile. They prepared for it, but did not surrender warmth because of it. That balance was rare. On her final night aboard the station, Valeth recorded a personal entry, separate from any official archive. She spoke plainly.
"Humans are often described by others as unpredictable. This is incorrect."
They are predictable in one important way. When given a choice between ease and effort, they choose effort. When given a choice between power and restraint, they hesitate, and then choose restraint. She paused, then continued. "This does not mean they will always succeed. It means they will always try." Her transport arrived the next cycle. As Valeth prepared to leave, several humans came to see her off. There were smiles, casual goodbyes, a promise to share messages. Mara waved. "Don't be a stranger." Valeth made the human gesture in return, awkward but sincere. As her ship detached and the station grew smaller, Valeth looked back one last time. She thought of all the species she had studied, all the traits catalogued and analyzed. None had unsettled her the way humans had. Not because of what they were, but because of what they refused to become. Back on her homeworld, the council listened carefully as Valeth presented her conclusions. There were questions, concerns, requests for clarification. Valeth answered patiently. When asked directly about the thing humans avoided discussing, she responded simply.
"It is not a weapon," she said. "It is a responsibility. Some council members were dissatisfied.
Others thoughtful. In the end, they accepted her recommendation. Humanity would be treated not as a potential threat, but as a partner to be understood slowly. After the session, Valeth returned to her private quarters, exhausted but calm. Her curiosity, once light and playful, had matured into something steadier. Respect. She thought again of the title she had once considered for her study, the one that now made her almost smile. The alien woman's curiosity was adorable, until it was about that. She understood now that the curiosity itself had changed. It had learned restraint, just like the humans. Valeth closed her eyes and allowed herself to rest, knowing that somewhere among the stars, a fragile species continued to choose kindness, again and again, not because it was easy, but because they knew exactly what happened if they didn't. And that, she decided, was the most human thing of all.